7:30 p.m. we're going to call the Utilities Commission meeting to order. Our first order of business is to approve the minutes of the Utilities Commission meeting of June 15th, 2015.
Move we approve the minutes of the Utilities Commission meeting.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? I don't have these figures.
Here, oh, and Linda has an extra copy.
Operating funds on hand for the Utilities Commission, the total cash on hand comes to $871,517.11. Also in our capital funds for water and sewer hookup, we have $239,400. Next order of business for the Utilities Commission is the payment of the bills. Is there a motion to pay the bills?
I move that we pay the Utility Commission bills.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Let the record show that we unanimously agreed to pay the bills. That brings us to Mr. Bob Sipes, the Utilities Commission report.
Hello, Mayor and Council. A couple things over at the lagoon. We were talking about this about a year ago. As the lagoon ages, it's still relatively new, but as it ages, we're going to see an increase in the cost of the equipment maintenance and repairs. What we've had in the past month, we had a VFD fail, which is a variable frequency drive for the return activated sludge pumps. 2 arms on the clarifiers have broken and fallen off. We ordered parts for that. I had to order new UV bulbs. They generally go for about $275. I found some made in the United States up in Connecticut. They go for $100 a piece. So we ordered those. A PLC power supply went bad, 2 of them in the last 2 months, and they had to be replaced. So you can see that the equipment is, we're going to hit where it will level out and maintain a constant rate pretty much. We're not quite there yet. I think we'll see a little bit more of an increase, and then it'll level out. The solar panels over at the lagoon are in. My understanding is Solar City is just waiting for Delmarva to coordinate with them so they can get it fired up. We now have an active telephone line over at the lagoon, something we haven't had in about 3 years because the telephone company kept telling us it was our line. But there's a new one in now. And we had a new truck delivered, a new pickup truck, came in under $25,000. We had originally budgeted $30,000, and that's it. We'll be placing an order for another one in this fiscal year. I'm not sure when. And that's all I have right now. You say you want to handle the recap?
Yeah, so our next item on the Utilities Commission is just a recap of the public meeting we had with the Maryland Department of the Environment. The meeting was held last Tuesday, July 14th, 2015. For those of you who've been living in a cave for the last year, this deals with really almost a 30-year-old oil spill at the hospital site in which, depending on who you talk to, anywhere from 100 to 150,000 or so gallons of heating oil was leaked into the ground. Since the late 80s, the hospital has been remediating that spill with what's called a pump and treat system, where essentially they have a series of wells around the property where they pump groundwater and any contaminants near the wells into the pumping system. Using that method, they've recovered approximately 83 to 85,000 gallons of product. The hospital and MDE are of the opinion that that system has essentially run its course and that the vast majority of what remains in the spill site is bound up in the soil and isn't particularly mobile. So the proposal in front of MDE, the plan that the hospital submitted, involves injecting this thing called a surfactant into the wells, a product called Ivysol. Think of adding dish soap to oil in a cooking pan and how it makes it dissipate really quickly. That's basically what the idea behind the Ivysol is that you inject this product into the wells on the site, it frees up the oil that's bound in the soil, and then the pump and treat system can then recover what's remaining on the spill site. Basically, a year ago, the hospital did a pilot test with the Ivysol. The results were analyzed by MDE. In MDE's opinion, The pilot test showed promise, and they are prepared to move forward with approving a broader use of Ivysol on the site. Basically, the way they described it is that the next phase will involve essentially like 4 big pilot tests in clumps. And one of the modifications that is being made to the plan is instead of turning the pump and treat system off during this process, the pumps will be going the entire time, which we hope will catch any oil that is freed up by this surfactant. And by the way, I'm not an oil remediation spill expert. This is all stuff I've learned in the last 6 to 12 months. We continue to reiterate some of our concerns with this test, namely that you're basically injecting this product into wells that may have a reach, and it depends on who you talk to, of how far this stuff spreads out into the groundwater. But that the spread from each well doesn't necessarily link up in a comprehensive manner, so that you may clean up the areas near the wells very efficiently, but leave contaminants between the wells. And then what happens? We reiterated our desire to have long-term monitoring of this both during and long after this next round of injections occur. We reiterated our concern that some of this product might escape during this process. And then what happens if some of it does reach our shallow water drinking well supplies, which are only about 1,000 feet down gradient from this site. So we requested and are continuing to request financial assurances either from the hospital or MDE or somebody that will say, hey, we'll post a bond of 10 to $15 million that ensures that if this, in a worst case scenario, you guys will have the funds you need, God forbid, to find a new area to drill new wells if it comes to that. I'm sure I'm missing something, but essentially MDE is, according to their statements at the meeting, ready to approve the current iteration of the hospital's submitted plan. And I'm sure I missed a few things. If you could add any insights to this, Bob, that would be great.
I'll just focus in on a couple things. From my perspective, the thing that makes this more dangerous than we're being told is, despite repeated requests from the town, no one has shown us where this has been done in such close proximity to a town or city's water source. They can say, oh, it's been done in Baltimore before. Well, Baltimore gets its drinking source from the Susquehanna and Loch Raven Reservoir. So to say it's being done in Baltimore, it's not being done at the source of their water, of their drinking water. The chemical supplier said, oh, it was done up in Connecticut. Well, I pulled the case file. It was done at a garage up in Connecticut for soil contamination. The closest drinking water plant was 2 miles away. So no, it's not the same thing. There are a lot of things that we don't know about this and that we don't know about the subsurface, including how the water flows, what direction and how fast. We asked for a site characterization model from MDE, which would tell us that. It'll tell us where the oil is, where the oil is not, the direction that it flows in, and what the prospect is for this type of remediation. And as the mayor said, this is not site cleanup. All they're attempting to clean up here are the wells. If you take a tube 20 feet long and it holds 300 gallons of water, that tube at the most is 24 inches across. But they're telling us that it will go out 25 feet. But what they say is that the area of influence is 25 feet. Well, that may be true. You might see a slight a 1/4 inch rise 24 feet away. That doesn't mean the chemical got there. It just means the water got mounted up out there. So I don't believe that they're cleaning more than a 4-foot diameter radius in those wells. So when you're cleaning up such small areas, even when you multiply that by 42 wells, it only accounts for probably 1 or 2% of the entire site. But what it does do is it cleans the soils around those wells and lets them reabsorb any contamination that comes into the area, giving you false readings of clean water. The monitoring wells, and one of the things we expressed to NDE, the monitoring wells serve a purpose. They're supposed to be a place to collect representative samples of what the groundwater looks like. But if you clean the wells and you don't clean the area, they're not representative anymore. Where do you go to get a representative sample? You'd have to put new wells in, but nobody's talking about that. So there are a lot of reasons that I think this is very scary and has the potential to cause a huge impact for us. But I will tell you what we are doing is we are grabbing VOC results out of the wells, sending it off to the lab, and having it analyzed. If something shows up in the drinking water, I promise you we will know it, and we will let you know it. The water supply right now does not have anything in it associated with that diesel. There is a consumer confidence report that is available here at Town Hall. It's also on the website. If anyone has any concerns about what's in the drinking water, it's on there. Even if something was picked up that's not regulated, it's on that report. And that's all I have.
Can I say one thing?
Yeah, sure.
How much does it cost to actually dig these wells? What's preventing us from digging our own monitoring wells in some of the sites that they haven't been monitoring?
We would have to get somebody's permission because we don't have any property. And one of the questions that I had asked when we first started having these discussions with the hospital, if you're not using the monitoring wells anymore and your site gets closed out, can we sample them? No, that's not an option. I was told point blank, no, that's not an option. I can think of one good reason for that.
How do we make it an option? And obviously, I know there are legal matters in this, but it seems like a very reasonable thing to do on our part. Obviously, we have our own standards, and the hospital has the standards, and MD has their standards. But obviously, it's our drinking supply. It's our resource, so we should have our standards as well.
Or could we drill them under the street?
We could probably put them in the street, but
That's what I
because
mean.
because of what we're testing for, you don't want interference from asphalt runoff. So it would actually have to be a sealed well that was put in the street, because as soon as you come up with a positive result for a petroleum product,
I wonder where it came.
everybody's going to say, hey, you put the thing in the middle of the street, what do you
Yeah.
expect to happen? So it's not a great place. Generally, you want a well, the better the construction of the well and more protected it is, the better result you're going to get as far as a representative sample of what's in the ground and not what is contaminated at the surface. So ideally, even the ones that the hospital has would be slightly elevated above grade so that you never have to worry about any type of groundwater intrusion or surface influence.
Do we have any properties surrounding the site that we could put our own monitoring wells in?
We probably do. I know we have a right-of-way that well 8 was in, and that could actually be used as a monitoring well. The only problem with that is it pumps a lot of water. What you typically pull out of a monitoring well is 1 to 2 gallons per minute, and that well used to be 250 gallon a minute. Now it's about 80. So that's still a significant draw to be pulling out of the well, and it hasn't been rehabbed since it has been left dormant. So then you run into a problem of what else are you going to get out of there? Because you can get just regular corrosion down in the well and iron buildup in the screen that could give you bad numbers. So that wouldn't make a great monitoring well, but the right of way that it's in may.
Right.
And if we were to talk to the homeowners, some of the homeowners might say you can put one in the yard, or you can put one at the property line, or you can put one behind that rose bush. Because once it's in, it's pretty non-intrusive.
Right.
It
Yeah, it's
just
just
kind of sits there.
A metal cap about this good.
How much does it cost?
I can get prices on it. These wells are similar in design to a drinking water well, except they have more screen. And the casing and grouting is a little bit different. So I think for what we're doing, I'm going to be wrong. I'll have to call a well driller and see what it costs.
I think it's a viable option. I think we should explore potentially doing that. I can't imagine a homeowner saying no when they're getting their drinking supply from, directly from the source. So I think it's definitely something that we should consider and look into. So if that's something that you and your department can do, I would love to see that.
What I can do is I can get you prices on it to let you know what's going to be involved. Probably have to have before it were to go forward, we would have to have a geologist look.
Right.
To see exactly what the best location would be. I'm thinking close to the Palestine flow channel, which is the swale that runs from Campus Avenue down through the water plant, would be the best place for one.
Right.
But okay, I will get a price on that.
Would you only need one, you think? Guess so, if you got it in the right place. One would do the trick.
Well, if I get a price on them, then you could always decide
If
later.
anything came south of Campus Avenue, we'd be concerned.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
scary stuff, and we asked what the time frame would be, and EPA said, or MDE said, the implementation of the IVSOL procedure would be 3 to 6 months, and then they would monitor the results for about a year or so to analyze the success rate of the test. And then at that point, so about a year and a half from now, they would then reanalyze what to do next. So this isn't something that's happening like in the next 5 to 10 days. It's going to be happening over,
Right.
the next several years. And we hit them over and over again, like, if you close out this site and with some of this stuff turns up downhill, what happens? And they kept saying, we wouldn't just let the hospital walk. We'd have to reanalyze and come up with a new strategy. So that was encouraging, even though I agree, the whole thing makes me very nervous because it's a big deal.
They were also asked, what happens if we get detections where there weren't any before during the test? What if this stuff makes the oil mobile and we start getting detects where we didn't have it before? And they said, oh, don't worry, we can convert these monitoring wells into recovery wells. It's not that simple. Because monitoring wells are a hole in the ground. There's nothing electric, there's nothing in there that pumps. You pump out a sample with a portable pump. So to convert that, you're talking about installing a well with a pitless adapter and running underground piping up to the side of the hospital where the oil remediation system is at. That's not something that's going to happen, with the speed that it would need to happen to keep this stuff moving. So I still think it's a dangerous plan. I don't think that the safeguards that are being put in place are adequate. And I think there's another way to go about doing this, as I explained at the meeting upstairs. There's another way to go about doing this if the intention is actually to clean up the site and not just to clean up the wells.
All right, are there any other questions?
I remembered you saying something about upgrading the equipment or the motors in the wells, and they were
Yeah.
pumping more.
In 1998, we had a similar circumstance happen at the hospital. We're not pumping oil anymore, we're not collecting it anymore, there's a problem here, all the oil must be gone. Well, then they rehabbed the wells. They cleaned the wells, and then they put some new pumps in the wells. And all of a sudden, they were collecting 1,000 gallons a month again. But that hasn't been tried yet. Because the focus, my opinion, the focus up there is not in collecting the oil now. The focus now is in closing the site out with all the expedients possible. Our focus is making sure that the drinking water stays safe.
All right. Okay, we're going to close the Utilities Commission meeting. It is 7:45 p.m.
adjourn the meeting or no?
Yeah, I think we did.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, good time.
Thanks, Bob.
Okay, we're gonna open the mayor and council meeting. It is 7:45 PM. The first order of business is to approve the minutes of the mayor and council meeting of July 6th, 2015.
It was a long meeting. The number of pages in the minutes tells you that. I move that we adopt these, or approve these minutes.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Any opposed? Okay, we've approved the minutes. I've been told that we do not have a figure this meeting for cash on hand, and we will have one at our next meeting.
I'm looking at it.
What's that?
I have it.
Oh, wait a minute, that's utilities.
It's here.
They said we didn't have one.
I got it by email.
Charge, it's all in the box.
All right.
We have temporary staff right now. We get an advice from an accountant who used to be an auditor, and working with our staff to see what their skill levels are, and we're finding they were greater than we thought. So right now, we are presently without an accountant. So this is a product that,
I got that from Kim, I think, by email.
yeah, good.
All right, so should I read these figures?
Yes.
Okay, so I stand corrected. Operating funds on hand, total operating cash for unrestricted use is $1,322,054.67. We also have a balance from the Washington College donation of $192,740, which brings our total operating fund to $1,514,794.67. Our next order of business is the payment of the bills. Is there a motion to pay the bills?
I
I
move
make
that
a
we.
motion, pay the bills.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, our fourth order of business. As many of you know, and I'm sure the reason many of you are here is the rumor has been out there, that the hospital is either closing or some services are being reduced. I've heard everything from there's going to be nothing there to it's just going to be an emergency room. As many of you probably have seen, there's a Facebook site with a lot of members. There's been obviously a lot of interest in this. So I actually reached out to Ken Cazell from Shore Regional Health. We had lunch and I said, listen, it would be great if you could come talk to the mayor and council directly and tell us the process that you guys are going through so that the public and the council can hear directly from you about what's going on. So Ken has graciously accepted that invitation and he's here this evening. So the way I'm hoping this will go is that Ken will basically describe the process that Shore Regional Health is going through. The council can ask any questions that we would like. And I don't want this to turn into like a giant public meeting because I think we're kind of early in the game here. And you can tell me if I'm wrong, Ken, but I think that's where we'll probably move with it. So why don't we go ahead and
Sounds good. Thank
Okay.
you, Mayor. Good evening, and council, good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to be here with you this evening. I understand that there are significant concerns as a result of some rumor and information that's been floating around the community about the hospital system, and I really do appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight, update you on the process and the timeline that we're going through, and to answer any questions you might have about where we are in that process and what that could mean to the local healthcare system that we provide here at Shore. Before I do that, though, I'll ask if, in an effort to put tonight's discussion in a little bit of context, if you'll allow me with just a few minutes of time to share with you the perspective of which we're working under in the healthcare world as we know it today. And it really starts at the national level. I'm sure all of you are aware of the Affordable Care Act and the implications that that act has on healthcare nationally. That Affordable Care Act really tries to provide insurance for those who are uninsured and ensures that those patients who now have insurance can get access to services. Whereas at one time, if they didn't, they would use the emergency room in the hospital for those services. So I think it's an important part of the Affordable Care Act, and it's an important part of our nation's desire to take care of the patient's wellness in addition to just their emergency care. The other things that are going on at the federal level really revolve around quality and cost. Quality is paramount in the healthcare industry, And the federal government, in a variety of ways, is really enforcing that hospitals, local, small community rural hospitals, all the way up to the academic medical centers that treat thousands of patients a day, really focus on quality. And not only focus on it, but get reimbursed based on the level of quality that they provide. So I can foresee in the very near future, payers like Medicare, Medicaid, government payers, and commercial payers, Blue Cross Blue Shield and the local providers, will be looking at the quality outcomes that we provide in the healthcare industry and either reward us based on those high quality outcomes, or penalize us for those outcomes that are not high quality. So developing the system at the national level that focuses on quality is one of President Obama's main focuses as part of the Affordable Care Act, and that will transcend down to every hospital in the nation. Other issues that are going on at the federal level really revolve around physician shortages. We've all seen articles in the paper. We know that there are physician shortages in a variety of specialties all over the country. The biggest shortage that we're experiencing today is within the primary care field. So much so that there aren't enough primary care physicians to meet the need of the nation, especially as you add more patients to the insured field. And that expands the need for primary care providers. So with our current shortage and with the expansion with the Affordable Care Act and getting those patients insured, we're faced with a shortage of primary care providers. And that's why the government, the state government, and local agencies like Shore Regional Health are looking at opportunities to expand who can provide that primary care service. So we're looking at other allied health professionals to help meet that need. But make no mistake, the physician shortage goes beyond primary care. It's exacerbated in the state of Maryland. Maryland is very tough with regard to physician recruitment and retention here. And there's a number of reasons for that. I won't go into those, but and also even within Maryland, in rural Maryland, it's incredibly difficult to recruit physicians to our community here in rural Maryland. So those physician shortages are real. They're going to continue in the future. We have to think creatively on how we're going to cover that shortfall. And then also at the national level, there are organizations, commercial, private organizations, private companies that are starting to get into the healthcare world. We can see, again, on the news, you can look at Walmart, you can look at CVS, you can look at other companies who are getting into the healthcare world. And how does that have an impact on the hospital businesses locally? It's our competition now. It's our competition that's providing similar services to what we provide locally as well. So from minute clinics to some primary care services, all the way up to urgent care services that are being offered by commercial providers or private companies in our local area. Is really causing the healthcare industry to be turned on a dime nationally. And that's got ramifications in us here locally. So let's take it down a notch for a second. Let's talk about what does that mean to the local, to the state of Maryland, and what we're doing here at the state. You know, the state really has its own unique payment system and process for how we manage healthcare here in Maryland. We have been granted a waiver that's almost over 40 years old. And that waiver allows the state of Maryland to provide healthcare services a little differently than the rest of the nation. And the difference really gets down to a regulated agency at the state level that controls what we can charge for hospital payments. Now, when you control the payments to the hospitals, you can also control how you're paid and what you're paid for. And over the years, over the past 40 years, the state's done an amazing job at regulating our industry, keeping us competitive with the quality that we provide in the healthcare industry in Maryland, but also keeping us competitive from the cost perspective. How much are we charging for the same level of services that other states are charging in the nation? We've been able to demonstrate that we are comparable, if not better, than most states in the nation with regard to quality and cost. The challenge that we faced over the last several years is that benefit has begun to deteriorate with a shortage of primary care physicians in Maryland, with increasing costs for providing care in Maryland as provided by the regulatory agencies. Our cost has gone up, and as a result, our quality has suffered. So it got so bad to the point where our elected officials at the national level and state level had to negotiate a modification to the waiver in the state of Maryland so that we could continue to operate under this one system regulatory payment system here in Maryland. Fortunately for the state, we were successful at modifying that waiver, but with that modification, it came down with very specific and very clear initiatives for the state of Maryland. And it really resulted in 3 major changes from what we were doing in the past. The first requirement with the new waiver that just started back in January of 2014, so we're just very new into this new process. The first criteria focused on hospitals expanding the scope of their responsibility. In the past, we mainly focused on sick care that's provided in the regulated environment in the hospitals. With the new waiver, we are now responsible for focusing on sick care and well care, the care that keeps our patients well, keeps our patients seeing their primary care and specialists as needed outside of the hospital system, only getting diagnostic testing when needed. High quality care, but reducing the cost. So sick care and well care. The second of three major focuses really touched on the shift from volume to value. Before January 1st of 2014, hospitals were incentivized for the amount of work that they did. The more work you did, the more you got paid. And there wasn't as much of a focus on that work with regard to the value that you provided to the patient and the community that you're serving. So that had to be a significant shift to go from volume to value, because that's going to allow us to provide higher quality care at a much lower cost. And then third and finally, the new waiver implemented a plan that said we have to reduce the cost of healthcare in the state of Maryland. That is a requirement of the new waiver. There are specific dollars associated with reducing the cost of Medicare and Medicaid services at the national level, and we're held accountable to that performance as part of the new waiver. So sick care and well care, from volume to focusing on value, and then also focusing on reducing the overall cost. So as you can imagine, in my world, in the healthcare world, our industry has basically been turned on a dime over the last several years. It is a significant paradigm shift from what we were accustomed to and working on in the past. But even with this change, we see it at Shore Regional Health and even in the state of Maryland as these challenges that have come forward to us have really been presented as opportunities for us to improve. So let me talk about what that means to Shore Regional Health, and if I can take it down one more notch. Shore Regional Health now has some very clear guidelines for how to operate a healthcare industry in the state of Maryland as a result of the federal Affordable Care Act and as a result of the new waiver. We have clear guidelines, we know what our responsibilities are, and it's now up to us within our Shore Regional Health system to provide the best quality care we can possibly provide at the lowest affordable cost. That's the initiative from the state, and that's what our focus has been since the new waiver took place. So what have we done about that? Some of the things that we've done very, very specifically include putting together a strategic plan. Since we merged with Chester River back in 2013, we are now a 5-county, 3-hospital system that covers about 370 square miles, and that treats almost 175,000 patients within the 5-county region. So from northern Kent County down to southern Dorchester County is our region. All the way across to Queen Anne's and to the east is all of Caroline County. That is our 5-county service area. That's what we're responsible for as our service area, and that's what our focus needs to be. So with that region, our strategic plan was based on providing levels of care under the new rules for those 5 counties and for the 175,000 citizens that we serve. So how do we go about doing that? We first put together a strategic plan that gives us direction under the new guidelines and under the new rules about how to succeed. But one of the things we haven't done yet is gotten down to the level of defining the services that we should be offering throughout those 5 county regions. We know what our mission statement is. We know what our mission is as an organization. We know what our vision needs to be. We know what goals we want to achieve. The next question is, what services do you offer and how do you accomplish those goals through the services that you provide? That is the exercise that we're undertaking as we speak. We're working on pulling together a strategic services delivery council. It's a council of the board of directors who is tasked with the responsibility of looking at and identifying services that we should be offering in our 5-county region over the next 5 to 10 years. It's important that we do that now because the rules have changed, and we need to make sure that the services that we offer meet those changing rules. So how are we going to go about doing that? Some of the key ways are that we will have each service line analyzed. So when I say service line, that just means something along the lines of orthopedic care, cardiology care, cancer care, those broad definitions of healthcare services that most community or academic hospitals offer. Those are the service lines that we're going to evaluate on a case-by-case basis. And the questions we're going to ask ourselves are, what are the pre-acute levels of care that we should be providing for each of those services, and where should we be offering those in the 5-county region? What are the acute care components of each of those service lines, and where should those acute care services be offered? And what about the post-acute care services? So pre-acute, acute, and post-acute. Let me give you an example of a pre-acute care service. That includes anything from education to the community about awareness. It includes screening exams for diabetes or for cancer. It includes primary health, primary care, so making sure that there's primary care appropriately situated throughout the communities, specialists care, diagnostic testing like x-rays, lab tests. All of that is under the umbrella of the pre-acute care. And the service line councils will be responsible for answering the questions about where those pre-acute care services need to be offered in the 5-county region. Then when we talk about the acute care services, that focuses on pretty much the regulated environment that we work in, the hospital services side of things, the emergency department care, the observation status for patients, the admissions into our hospitals, the surgical services that are offered both on an inpatient basis and on an outpatient basis. Those primary elements make up the acute care part of our services. So as an example with orthopedics again, what we need to answer is where will our patients receive their acute care orthopedic needs? Where will they have their surgeries? Where will they be admitted to the hospital? Where will their emergency care be managed, and how will that patient go from the emergency room to the other acute care facilities within our services? So we need to answer those questions for the acute side on a service-by-service basis. And then the final area, the post-acute care, is just as important, because under the new world about well care, we really need to make sure that we're coordinating our patients' care before they come into our hospital system and after they use our hospital services. So it's the coordination of that care. It's the home health services. It's the rehabilitative services if rehab is needed. It's working with hospice care if needed, or palliative care if needed. So how do we transition those patients effectively throughout the service area that we cover for that post-acute care needs? That is the focus of our Strategic Services Delivery Council, is to identify the solutions to that model, to develop that model that will answer those questions for us on a service line by service line basis throughout the 5-county region for each of the services that we have. What's important to also note is that there's a role that I think the county and town play in this solution process. So mainly I see it on the post-acute care side. When we talk about continuums of care, the county and town offer services that we need to link effectively with our patients. Department of Health Services, social services, EMS and the providers getting more involved in the care of our community as well. So partnering with our community providers, partnering with the town and counties that we serve, creating that continuum of care that's going to keep our patients healthy and only bring them into the hospital system when it's absolutely necessary. So that's part of our focus. In addition to defining the service delivery model, we need to answer the questions about transportation for those services. 375 square miles of territory is a lot of territory to cover, and there are a variety of different transportation systems in each of the counties. And our challenge as one system in 5 counties is to integrate that transportation system to the services that we offer in our community. So it's critical that that component be overlaid with any recommendations that ultimately come to our board. So that process that our board has asked us to undertake as part of our strategic plan is now getting underway. And by getting underway, I mean that we've identified the members of the Strategic Services Delivery Council. That council has over 30 members, and it includes members from our board, from our management team. There's a few of us on that as well. But mainly that group consists of, in large part, physicians who use our services and who refer patients to us over the 5-county area. That council is now going to be the overseeing body that the services plan will feed up to. And right now we are also in the process then of creating those small service line councils for cancer, for orthopedics, for behavioral health, for primary care, for medical specialties and surgical specialties. We're getting all of those subcommittees formed with representatives from our physician community and our team as well, and from experts throughout the community as well. All of that is being formed as we speak, with the intent of having our first series of meetings in the early part of August of this year. Again, with the intent of creating that plan that we will bring back to our board of directors for conceptual approval ideally by the end of this calendar year. So they'll have from the first part of August to the end of December to collate their thoughts and impressions into one regional plan for our system. At which point our board of directors, who I think it's important to stress, is made up of local members of our community. Even though we are fully owned by the University of Maryland Medical System, we have 24 board members on our board of directors. Only 2 of those members are representatives from the corporate office at the University of Maryland Medical System. And that's the CEO of the medical system and the Chief Strategy Officer for the medical system. Those are the only 2 UMS representatives on our board. The remaining 22 out of the 24 members are local community members, representative of the 5 counties that we serve. So that board will then hear the plan that comes up for the Service Delivery Council and decide what the next step should be and how that should be enacted. That's the steps that we're in now. No decisions have been made with this process. We are evaluating what our future needs need to look like in the realm of national change and very dramatic state change. And we're trying to be proactive and 2 steps ahead of where the industry is, where our competitors are, and putting a plan together that's going to help us not only survive as an organization, but thrive as an organization in this dynamic world we live in.
Once the recommendations are made, let's say by the end of this calendar year, will there be an opportunity for the public to come and talk to you guys about what those recommendations are?
That's a great question, Mayor. And I personally see a couple of different opportunities for the public to get engaged. I foresee an opportunity during the process. So as the service delivery councils are meeting, have focus groups throughout the counties that we serve. Get feedback and have a discussion with our community about the healthcare services that they receive and how it can evolve to become a better system in the future. So I see that happening during the work of the Strategic Planning Council from August to December. And then I believe our board is going to make sure that if we hadn't done it effectively enough during that time period, that we then take the plan that's brought up to the board and vet it through the community before the board ultimately gives its blessing. And I see that happening conceivably in the first quarter of calendar year 2016. So the January, February timeframe, with the intent to try to get a final recommendation from the board by the March timeframe of next year. Now, all of that is contingent upon us being able to reach consensus on what this model looks like and get it before the board in that short period of time. But we've got a lot of experts who are very patient-focused, who are very supportive of our system, who are going to sit down and help us map out this future.
From my end, I get the people that hear just the idea that the hospital's considering certain things, and then what I get is the hospital's closing down completely. And so those are the calls and emails that I'm constantly dealing with. So I know the future is uncertain, but can you give us at least some assurance that there will be some form of a hospital/emergency room at this site in the future?
Mr. Mayor, I share your concerns because as you get those calls, I get those calls as well. And we have over 600, 700 employees, 600 to 700 employees just covering the Chestertown and Kent County area, and 2,500 employees that cover all of Shore Regional Health. Very concerned, and when rumors like that go out, it's something that I take very seriously and that I respond to very quickly. With regard to Chestertown, the Shore Medical Center in Chestertown will continue to be a viable organization in Chestertown and in Kent County for the foreseeable future. We have an obligation to this community to provide excellent health care for the patients and members of our community. What that care looks like, what services are offered, that's what we're trying to determine as we speak. But we will continue to have a presence in this community. As long as I'm here and for the foreseeable future, our board is committed to the 5 counties that we serve, of which Kent County is one. Chestertown is a big component of that with the current medical center here. We don't see that changing moving forward.
I guess the other thing, and I've mentioned this to you before, is I think what other people see is, hey, when this was owned really by the community, yes, there may have been some services that lost the money, but because it was really a community-owned, like literally Kent County, people that lived in Chestertown, they would go out and raise money to make up the difference, whereas it seems like this is a little bit more of a corporate mentality, even though it's a little odd because you guys are basically a nonprofit. Now, I work at a nonprofit as well. We lose money out the nose, and that's kind of why you're a nonprofit. You could go beg people for money to make up for the places where you know you're going to lose money every year. So can you address
Sure.
that?
With the major changes that are going on at the national and state level, it is virtually impossible for hospitals to sustain themselves if they're not making a profit and rely on community support to do that. It's virtually impossible. The regulatory requirements that are imposed on the industry, the cost of getting the physician manpower and the allied and the clinical manpower in place to support it is astronomical. And it's growing year after year after year. It's becoming really difficult within rural Maryland. So those days are virtually impossible, but we have a very vibrant foundation in many areas within our 5-county service areas. Some of our foundation members are here tonight. Actually, the president of our foundation and several members are here from our foundation who actively go out and solicit our community for financial support for the hospital. They do a fantastic job. They're committed to what they do. They're committed to their community and to the healthcare system in the community. We can't survive, quite honestly, without their efforts and what they're doing for us now. But to lay the burden of covering the gaps in the systems, one, is not fair for the community. That's really part of my job, is to ensure that we are efficient, that we're cost effective, and that we're, most importantly, that we're providing high quality care. And that's where our organization needs to take the initiative to look at who we are in this new world, evaluate what our services are, and respond to the changing world that we're living in with a plan and a vision that gets us there successfully. That includes looking at all the services that we provide, focusing on quality, focusing on the patient experience, focusing on reducing the cost of care, all consistent with the state initiative and the federal initiative, doing it in a way that's very successful for us so that we can thrive in the future.
Liz?
Yeah, I learned quite recently that there's a process, an annual process at the level of the State Healthcare Commission that uses the data from the prior year to actually allocate the number of beds for each facility in the state. And that the current allocated number of beds at our hospital is 41. And so I'm wondering if through this process certain medical areas, for example, you used the example of orthopedics, are consolidated in one location, then what will happen to our allocation of beds? Would they automatically go to that place? Would there be a process for ever getting them back in Chestertown if the demographics change? What will happen through there?
Your assumption is correct, that the state does regulate the beds and they evaluate those the bed counts for all hospitals in the state on an annual basis. If organizations like SHORE look at services and shift services from one location to the other, like orthopedics with the example you gave, the beds would in fact shift to that hospital that's absorbing those patients.
So they would stay within Shore Health.
They would stay within Shore Health, but shift to the hospital that those patients are transferring to. And those new bed counts would then be adjusted regularly on that same annual basis. And that shift can occur either way, and it can occur regularly. You just need to make sure that one, your community at a high level understands and supports the plan. Two, through your board of directors, you have the approvals that you need from your local board to do the things that you're doing. And then also that the state regulatory agencies approve these changes as well. Because also part of the new world that we live in is a capitation for the revenue that we receive as a hospital industry. We are now capped, or we are capped at the level of revenue that we receive at Shore Health for the services that we provide. So regardless of where those services go, as long as they're within the Shore Health world, that cap is not impacted. If those patients go to our competitors, and we start to lose that market share for the services that we provide, that cap is lowered.
So it would stay in this, whatever beds we might or might not move in the future, but they would stay in our region.
In our Shore Regional Health region, yes ma'am, all within the 5 counties that we serve. Yes, ma'am.
Linda?
Okay, Anne Arundel Medical Center has satisfied 2 certificates of need for expansions already. And our doctors here in Kent and Queen Anne's Hospital who have gone with Anne Arundel Medical Center have shifted that patient population to Anne Arundel County. I mean, that's basically already been done. My doctor's in Queen Anne's County. I'm with Anne Arundel Medical Hospital. it's not an inconvenience for me because I walk across the bridge 4 days a week. But this too is, I think if there's this, you know, if you really define exactly what services are here, what services are going to be located specifically in the other, we have a hospital, Easton has a hospital. Those are the only two hospitals in the 5-county catchment area.
There's one in
And Cambridge,
Cambridge.
okay. If somebody in Rock Hall has a stroke, and your stroke center is in Easton, and the first hour is critical to you for your life or death situation, what is going to be outlined for specifically for that stroke patient? If somebody has a heart attack, you know, can they receive those services here in this hospital? I'm just, you know, you don't have to really answer me, but I think this is what the public really wants to know is if I have this medical condition, this is where this, if I have to go here to get treated, how am I going to get transported from here to here to save my life? And then there have been helicopter transports for what, 2 or 3 years now, in and out into the hospital. The cost of that, you know, and what people specifically, what conditions are being specifically shipped out, and are they going to Baltimore? And I wonder how many doctors now in the 5-county catchment area will join your team, your organization for this research for that you're going to start in August. And how many board members are there going to be total?
We have 24 total.
24. Do the counties who have hospitals, Dorchester, Kent, and Talbot, have priority over the number of board members that will be on that board? I really think to save services, you know, it would be nice to have a few more board members. Then I have a problem too. I know that Travilla Farm was left to Kent and Queen Anne's Hospital. That was the Stradley Farm. And now the Workman Farm is for sale in the paper. Workman Farm, I believe the bids have to be 2.5 million or above. Travilla Farm, I believe it was for over 2 million. A portion went to the hospital, was to go to Kent and Queen Anne's Hospital, and then there was one other recipient. Now, in addition to that, the Workman Farm has received rent for the past 5 years. And correct me if I'm wrong, but this goes to Chester River Health Foundation. How much of that money is going to stay here in Kent County, because both of those farms were given to Kent and Queen Anne's Hospital before UMS came into Kent County?
Can I take a stab at answering some of those? Would you like me to?
I mean, you know, I really have a problem, you know, with this money that was given to Kent and Queen Anne's Hospital by, with the two farms, and if it leaves Kent County.
Our foundation here in Chestertown are the stewards of the funds raised in the past, the funds that we own through land that's part of our foundation, as well as the funds that are raised in the future. They're stewards of those dollars, and there's commitments made that dollars raised locally will stay locally. And that's the responsibility of Mr. Nolan as chairman of the foundation and the foundation board to ensure that that happens. That's even written in the memorandum of understanding that was created when Chester River Hospital System and Shore Health merged. So it's a written part of the memorandum that says that local funds raised locally will stay locally. That includes any sale of property that is owned by the foundation.
Will we know how those funds will be, how we'll benefit from those funds in Kent County?
I believe we are extremely transparent with how those funds
Okay.
are used. Yes. Can I take a stab at some of the other areas you mentioned?
Sure.
Because you hit a couple of great points that I think are worth just reinforcing. And that is that Anne Arundel Medical Center is a competitor of ours. They're a significant competitor, and they are a larger system than we are. Even though they're only one hospital, for a larger system and have more financial resources than we have at Shore Regional Health. But that doesn't mean that we can't work hard towards creating a system and a program, a service delivery model that rivals theirs and competes with theirs, and is built or created so that our patients have choices and that they can choose Shore Regional Health. But one thing I want to be clear on is that Shore Regional Health cannot be all things to all people. The days of us being able to provide every level of service in all locations are far gone. But what we made a commitment to do is to be the best at those services that we do offer. We know we can't offer everything. We're not going to do heart surgeries within the Shore. But we need to align ourselves with organizations that can do that for us, that provide great outcomes, and then we need to work on the transportation mechanism so that they get there effectively. And if helicopter is an option, as it is in some cases, effectively and as with minimal cost as possible. So we recognize that we have our own limitations. We're defining what those are, and we're working very hard to make sure that once we do define that we've got the facilities to support those services, and that the outcomes that we obtain from every patient that uses our services is great, and they come back for more. Because that's what's going to make us or break us as an organization. Under this new model, if your patients migrate out of your service area, you lose that market share, you lose that revenue that's with that. And the more revenue you lose, the harder it is to reinvest and grow services in our community. And then it's almost a downward spiral from there.
I would like to reinforce one of the points that Linda made, which, again, because I'm sort of more on the grassroots of the complaint level, and that is, hey, if I get a heart attack, can I go there, or am I going to have to go to Cambridge? And so my recommendation, I know it's early in the process, but if and when you have a public meeting in December or January, February, or March, I would spell all of that out as clearly as possible, because it is a big deal. I mean, we're a very rural area, and it's especially true of people in, it would be a bummer for me if I had to go to Easton, but if I'm in Rock Hall, that's another 20, 25 minutes, and it's a big deal. So just spelling it out and, dumbing it down to just, if you have a stroke, you go here. If you have a heart attack, it's this. If you break your ankle, maybe it's easy.
Those are such important answers to questions we have to raise, Mayor.
Right.
You hit it right on the head, and you hit it right on the head too as well, ma'am. That's why our board is really requiring us to go through these steps to very clearly define that, so that those questions, when we do get out to the public forum, are very clearly answered.
Right.
And that, and they're not thought of by administrators or by a board who has limited healthcare experience. They're thought of and crafted mainly by physicians who care for our patients in those specialty areas. So the cardiologists will sit down and talk about how heart care is covered from education and screening and diagnostic testing all the way through to PCI, which is freeing the potential block in an artery, all the way to open heart surgery. So define what it looks like and where our patients go when they see each of those circumstances.
But, if you're, God forbid, Chris, suddenly having a heart attack, or my husband is having a stroke, my first stop is still going to be the emergency room
That's right.
on
We hope.
Brown Street. I mean, there's not surely any consideration
Please don't drive yourself.
Rescue
of
squad.
considering an
911.
emergency room.
That's right.
You wouldn't,
I'm sorry.
you're not considering limiting the emergency services at any of the
That's made a
hospitals.
significant investment to the
Yeah,
emergency
exactly.
department.
And I
Sorely needed by the community.
assume all the emergency rooms in the system will do the initial,
I understand what you're saying, but I think they need to hear it from you.
Right.
yeah,
Come on,
And,
Matt.
I'm here today to share with you the process that we're currently embarking and the timeline that's
Yes.
associated with that, and trying to give you the assurances that there will be community involvement in the process. And our board, which is made up of local directors who live in this community, who use the healthcare services of our community, will ensure that not only today, but long into the future, the models that we create under the new environment that we're working in are going to be those models that produce great quality outcomes for our patients in a very cost-effective manner that's going to make for a great patient experience as well.
And I mean, one thing I'm really itching to know, and this is of course going to come after your strategic plan development, but I really want an emphasis on where I go for certain services, and I really want that to be stressed in whatever public meeting comes about when you're actually presenting the strategic plan. As a young person myself, with me getting married soon, hopefully having kids, where do I go when it's time to deliver a child? Where do I go if that child becomes ill? And those are things that I never really thought too much about until now when it actually comes time to planning for a family. So of course, seeing the pediatrics department close here in town, my thought process is, well, I've just added a significant commute that of course takes hours out of my work day, my spouse's work day. So in terms of just from a planning standpoint, I mean, we really need to see some stuff down on paper, just because it's a very important time in our life. And I'm sure there are a lot of other young people here in the community who are also very concerned about where they take their sick children. So that's definitely something I really want to see. And just one of my concerns, having just watched this all unfold, is what the overall vision was in the beginning when Kent and Queen Anne's Hospital merged with UMES. Everything has seemed relatively, not necessarily haphazard, but from a standpoint in which I'm not familiar with the overall health system, you have your multiple hospitals here on the shore health system. You build the pavilion on Kent Island despite Anne Arundel County medical system being right down 50. You invest millions in the new emergency ward in the Chester River Hospital. Plans were to build a new medical center right near the Talbot Community Center, but that hasn't broken ground yet. What was the original vision of the overall system, and how has that changed so substantially just in the past few years?
It's a great question. The original vision of the system here at Shore, as well as pretty much the industry in the state of Maryland, was grow volume, add business, do as much as you can, because the more you did, the more you got paid. And the more you got paid, then you can reinvest those dollars back into the services in the community, or back into paying for the rent on the new Anne Arundel Medical Center. That's how you survived, that's how you thrived back before this new waiver, and back before the new payment structure by the state. So with the changes, though, we're now capitated at our revenue. So we can't, even if we grew volume, we can't offset that by additional revenue. So we have got to work within the financial constraints that our hospital and every other hospital has now under this new waiver. And what that means is that we just need to use our dollars more prudently. And more prudently is resulting in investing in all of our services, but really trying to focus a little bit more on the outpatient services that are offered in our community. So when you mentioned Queen Anne's County does not have a hospital. Even though there's an urgent care facility in Queen Anne's through Anne Arundel, they didn't have an emergency department either. So the closest emergency department, if you lived in Kent Island or Queen Anne's, was either Chestertown or Easton. And for the growing population that's serviced there in that county, that just wasn't good enough. So that's why the emergency center was built there, to support that need, as well as the medical office building, which focuses on outpatient services, primary care physicians, specialists, diagnostic testing. That is the new world that we're living in now. There is more and more a greater shift to the outpatient arena. One quick example is knee replacement surgeries. In the past, even today, in many places, you get a knee replacement, you're in the hospital. You're doing your pre-work, you're going to the hospital, you're getting your knee replacement, you're spending a day or two in the hospital, and then you're rehabbing outside of the hospital. Very, very soon, I would say within the next 6 to 12 months, knee replacement surgeries could be done on an outpatient basis in a surgery center. So no inpatient stay, knee replaced, get up the same day within a reasonable period of time, work on the knee, go home, have the rehab process begin once you get home. That's the shift in technology, that's the shift in care and how care is provided, because it's still the same high quality care, but it's also at a much reduced cost than what's being provided within the four walls of the hospital, which is the most expensive part of the healthcare industry. So the shift, the things that you've seen, the investment in the emergency department here, the investments in our Cadmus project in Easton of consolidating our physicians' offices into one building, patient experience, high quality care, lower the cost. That's the mantra, that's our vision, that's our new focus, and everything we do ties into one of them. All three of those things before we actually consider it.
Okay, I'd like to wrap this up actually, because we could probably talk about this for 2 more hours, and I'm hoping that in, later this year, when the recommendations are made, that we'll have hopefully a separate meeting that's just about this, not crammed into an already kind of full agenda.
Absolutely.
So thank you very much for coming, and we appreciate it.
Appreciate the time, and thank you for your questions.
Okay. Next up is our police report, Chief Baker. Just driving people out of here, aren't you? I don't think you
You
should.
want one?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'd like to present the report for the police department for the month of June 2015. And you should have a copy before you showing the administration was 17 hours at 2% of our time. Our criminal investigations were about 13 hours at 1%. Accident investigations were 12 hours at 1%. Vehicle patrol 577 at 48%. Foot patrol was 125 hours, which was 11%. Training was 115 hours at 10%. Court 24 hours at 2%. Our overtime was 130 at 11%. That was 8 officers contributing. We made 11 adult arrests involving 22 separate charges. Broken down, the charges were 6 for burglary, 6 for CDS, 6 thefts, 3 assaults, and 1 failure to appear. We had no juvenile arrests this month. Our Part 1 offenses were 9, and we cleared 9 by arrest. Our Part 2 offenses were 5, and we cleared 4 by arrest. We had 14 motor vehicle citations issued. We had 208 motor vehicle warnings issued, and we had 435 red speed tickets issued. Breaking down our wards, we had 5% of the calls in Ward 1, approximately 40 in Ward 2, approximately 24 in Ward 3, approximately 23 in Ward 4, and approximately 9 were outside the jurisdiction. The busiest time was between 4 and 5 for the month, average. And our busiest day was Tuesday, which is
That's weird.
kind of weird. And I can only kind of anecdotally consider that we had weird weather.
That was the oil spill meeting.
Yeah.
People were so loopy when they left.
That's very possible. It's just one of those weird things.
I was a public threat after that.
And I did not consider, but it's very possible. I did want to address one thing that was asked of me the last meeting, and that was to review the change in venue of Legacy Days. I contacted Karen at the Historical Society, and if you recall, there was a request to move kind of up one block, and our consideration was accurate, and that was that they were doing that so that the park could be incorporated in their event. And I pointed out that we sort of have a model when Santa Claus comes to town, we block those 2 streets, so it works fine as far as traffic flow. Had that conversation with them, and that is the way we will continue to do it. Okay? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Question?
Do you have office hours? Are you ever there to review a site?
Yeah. No, sir. It's there's somebody in there at 7 until 5. I'm usually in there around 7:30. Early morning. That's fine. If you wish to speak with me, tell me a time. Okay.
Thank you for coming, Senator.
Thanks.
Really
Thank you
appreciate
very
it.
much. You want a reserve thing put on your,
No,
I want to
I
take your
didn't.
seat, Linda.
I know, I didn't.
I could
see
put a
it.
reserve sign on your seat.
You could have one just, you didn't introduce him.
We were getting ready.
I know.
Oh,
we
you
should've.
should have said.
We were getting ready to. It's nice of you to come.
Okay, town manager's report. Billing is on.
I brought in 6 ordinances that you all wanted to pass when Marty Stetson was gone. So
Fire, give me the pen.
are you ready? You have them, Jen?
I got
I've got
mine
them, yep.
Do you at least have the one,
Triplicate.
do you have the one on 333 South Cross Street?
Yeah.
We really missed an opportunity here, I'm sorry. But at our last meeting, I introduced an ordinance to declare 333 South Cross Street as surplus property and authorize the sale of, and tonight would be the night where you could first enact it if you so desire. If you do, it'll become effective August 10th, 2015 after an appropriate period of time. And I had to say thank you to the chief for pulling the vines off of the sale. Probably get 10 more grand out of it just from killing those. That's workman's comp, I believe.
I would think so.
So what's the pleasure of the
I
council?
would like us to get
Well,
this
I
moving.
move
I'd
we,
like to get it moving.
Well,
we adopt
need a
the
motion.
ordinance.
We need to
Well, I moved that we introduce it. Can I also move that we adopt it?
we-
Yes.
All right, I move we adopt ordinance 02-2015 to declare 333 Cross Street to be surplus property and authorizing its sale.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
uh,
Any opposed? Okay,
Okay, good. Well, we'll start the
pass that
process.
around.
You only have to sign 3 of them. The next thing I have is just another event with, let's see, this is from Jody Ford's, Chestertown River Arts and Washington College CES. With regard to Riverfest, a joint event sponsored by River Arts, WC Center for the Environmental Society, and Sandbox. On September 26, 2015, we request the following. Closure of High Street from Water Street to Chester River Landing, starting at 12 noon. A waiver of the open container ordinance from noon until 9 p.m. for Wilmer Park, the High Street Landing, the River Walk, and that Water Street areas. Place signage indicating that High Street will be closed. That's pretty easy. They're just talking about the park by the Custom House, I believe. So I think this is an annual event.
It is.
It's an annual event that's being expanded.
It seems to be back to the week that they used to have, and it was always a nice week. So the council all right on it? You don't have to have a motion
So
on it.
did you say they wanted open container or permit
Oh,
or
yeah, we
whatever
do.
you call it, waiver, all the way from Wilmer Park over to High
No,
Street?
for those the 4 locations, from 12 to 9, open container at Wilmer Park, the landing at High Street, the River Walk, and the Water Street areas. I don't know what the Water Street areas are, maybe in front of Custom House. We'll get them to
So-
define it.
The whole River Walk and,
What's the date on it?
September 26th.
They have plenty of time
Lots
to
of time.
define it.
They probably want to come in and explain the final version. So you want to wait until future meeting to
I
waive the
do.
open container?
it's kind of a big area for open containers.
Yeah, I think they actually meant for the Wilmer Park, the High Street landing. Okay, I think the next and only thing I have is that the SHA Task Force meeting, I guess that's next Monday, July 27th at 7 p.m., right in this room. This will be the second meeting of the task force. Just letting you know that.
You said 7 p.m.?
That's, yep, so there's representatives of each ward and the State Highway Administration. There were 3 last time, 3 gentlemen came in. That's the end of my report.
Good. I'm going to be brief. We've been talking for several months about trying to finalize an MOU with the Kent County Commissioners with regards to hookups on their Lover's Lane properties. And as far as I know, they have agreed to come discuss the issue with us at our meeting on Monday, August 3rd. So just want to let everybody know about that.
Do you think we ought to consider starting the meeting a little earlier?
That is something we could consider. Maybe, can we do like a working session with them at 7?
Start at 7, I think. Hopefully, the MOU is only 1 paragraph, but I'm sure that the discussion's going to be longer than 1 paragraph.
7 o'clock?
That's what I would recommend, because, people who come in for regular business that may not have any interest in that.
That's our next meeting.
August 3rd.
Monday, August 3rd.
Yeah.
So we will advertise it for that. It'll
For
be
7.
open to the public, but I think we'll get the same.
You said 7?
Can you send us a
7
email?
p.m. Is that all right with everybody?
Yeah.
I'm gonna, and I just asked if Jen could send an email just to remind everybody, because for me, it's helpful to have it on my
And James,
Yeah.
7 p.m.
Of course, Sam's doing it all on his iPhone.
Of course.
His 20s.
Okay, that's
So
all.
am I, and I'm not in my 20s.
That's impressive, Liz.
You can do better, Chris. Come on.
I know, this thing's still such a mystery to me. Some good news, we've been, as I said, working on the marina, even though it still looks exactly the same as it did. Actually, we've made a few some repairs down there, but Case and Bill have been working hard on applying for grants for basically planning and architectural work for what we're calling the Chestertown Marina Interpretive Center, which is the new building that we envision replacing the Williams Marine shed, which would basically, on the first floor, have become a marina store, an interpretive center, and possibly a third space for marine-related retail, like kayak rentals, and then essentially an open second floor with a balcony where patrons of the marina could go to the second floor, look out on the river, and we could open that for public meetings. We applied to the Maryland Heritage Areas Authority for, I think we applied for $50,000 and then were awarded $35,000. And we applied to USDA for a similar amount, and how much did they give us? 22,000. So basically, we have grants totaling about $57,000 to get the actual architectural renderings ready for that building, which should be a fun process. And once we get those renderings, that's what you need to be able to start raising money.
So does that facility, I guess, supersede the visitor center then? Or
No.
are we going to be operating two visitor centers essentially?
Some budget.
No.
Pardon?
Now, it would definitely be, well, there would have to be showers and facilities for people who
Yeah, that's
are in the marina. So no, it's a spot where people who come from the water would first.
So this is just primarily to accommodate boaters
Exactly.
and not an elaborate
Nope.
No.
facility.
We're very happy with the way. it
Gotcha.
was
Okay.
The interpretive center part of it, is this a focus on the history of our waterfront, that kind of thing?
I think it would be a history of our waterfront and the community in general, but also it would have maps and signage directing people into town. And that was something that came up in the waterfront task force, which is, if I'm a boater and I come to town, where do I go?
Right.
There's nothing down there really telling you, there's a college up the hill, there's a, historic district 2 blocks from where you're standing, and we need some signage to that effect, but also we want to tell the story of the town.
Right.
And this is a great potential venue to do that.
Really like to see us, when we get down the road to the content of that interpretive center, to work with the appropriate people in the community and maybe the Center for the Study of the American Experience.
At CV Star Center.
To focus on the history of that waterfront
Yeah.
as an industrial port and the African-American community that
Absolutely. And they are actually already.
lived and worked there.
CV Star actually
Because
has
that's all
some great-
disappeared.
They have some great materials already down there.
Great.
That we could tie into really nicely.
Yeah, they have that walking tour, that self-guided
Yeah.
walking tour.
So that's good news, more money being raised for the marina improvements. And that's it, I'm gonna stay brief because we've kind of gone on pretty long. Let's go to ward reports. Marty's obviously not here. I'm starting with Sam. I don't think we've ever started with you.
Never started with me before. And unfortunately, this is like the first time I don't have anything to report, so
Perfect.
so much for being first this time.
Okay, Linda?
Okay, I got an email, there are gonna be alligators in Fountain Park.
In the
I don't know whether
fountain.
you all got it or not.
Yeah.
But the People's Bank Concert Series this Wednesday, July 22nd, 6:30 to 8, and if it rains, it's gonna be at the firehouse. Our Historical Society, Karen Emerson, is leaving Kent County, and we have a new executive director, which is Suzanne Cole, who is Dr. Cole's wife, the director of student services at Washington College, and Amanda Smith is the deputy director. And sadly, we said goodbye to 2 beautiful people in Chestertown last week. There was a celebration of life for Mr. William Isaacs, who was an icon in Chestertown. And then Sandy Fruhawk, who moved to Chestertown and made her mark in our community by writing the book Lucy the Goose. And, did you know that?
I didn't know it was her that did
Yeah,
that.
it was Sandy. And one thing that I found very interesting at her celebration of life was that Dr. Toll presented her with her doctorate degree at, I think she went to Stony Brook, and 36 years later, they met when she and her husband Steve moved to Chestertown, and Dr. Toll was president here at Washington College. It just absolutely and totally amazes me where people come from and move to Chestertown. So, and I want to thank Bill, because he gave me a donation, and the Chestertown Police Department for the donations for my team, so I did not have to kiss the pig at the 4-H fair this year. And the total amount raised for all the teams was over $15,000.
Jeez.
Who did kiss the pig?
Commissioner Short kissed the pig, finally.
I saw him Saturday. He said he wasn't doing it.
Look her up, big
So-
boy.
Thank you.
Okay, Liz?
Well, I just have one thing, since Linda didn't mention it, and Chris probably
the
couldn't.
Sultana.
I was thrilled to participate in
Yeah.
the groundbreaking for the new building for Sultana on Cross Street on Saturday morning, partly as a member of town council and partly as a great supporter of Sultana. So I think that building is going to be a real, like Chris said in his remarks, a real anchor for that part of town, which is exciting. But like Sam, I actually periodically take an hour or so and literally drive all the streets in my ward looking for things to bring up, and found nothing whatsoever this afternoon.
That is fantastic.
Except the dead branch is still on my tree.
It's a separate issue.
That's not your ward, is it?
Yes,
Okay.
certainly is.
Okay,
There's a twin.
there were no requests to be on the agenda. Are there any questions or comments from the audience? Yes?
My name's John Wright, I live on South Mill Street, and I'd like to make some comments about that refrigerated trailer that's been parked behind JR's now for 11 days. It cycles on and off about 15 minutes of every hour. So we have about 6 hours a day of this diesel motor running in the park. It's parked on the town parking lot, our neighbors, children, myself, neighbors. Runs in the middle of the night, early in the morning, runs all day. And I would like some help from the town to eliminate that trailer or eliminate its noise, or to encourage JR to come up with electric refrigeration or some solution. It's a big burden.
Can I address this? I sent you Case's email
Yeah.
within an hour of receiving yours. And did you get his response?
Yeah.
Okay. It's not going to be an immediate response from the contents of his email.
Something I saw that email, but I think that if it's that annoying, that we need to help JR find another solution, either by temporarily moving the truck at night so y'all can sleep to maybe the town yard or something where there might be a building to buffer you from the noise, but I will work on it too, if you don't mind.
He puts all his frozen goods in there. He's got a 50-foot truck for.
Well, that's just something that's gonna have to change. It can't be 6 weeks temporary. We had to, that's how, and a contractor came in here last week before these emails and before you had written anything, and said that they want to rebuild the one inside, but it's a shambles and there's issues about who owns the property.
Yeah.
They really want to do it, the guy wants to start on it, so, but you're bearing the problem at night, so. So if you don't mind, I'll try to help you with it tomorrow.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, someone better make a motion to adjourn quickly.
I make a motion to adjourn this meeting.
Is there a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we're unanimously adjourned.